Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com.
Are you followers?
Okay, so we're gonna probably add.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Welcome to GatherGeeks. David is away this week. Our guest today is Justin Lefkovitch, founder and CEO of Mirrored Media, an LA-based event production agency. They've created activations for clients at Comic-Con, Sundance, and memorably Coachella, for which they produced the Road to Coachella campaign for BMW that garnered huge social media impressions. Justin brings his background as a magician and a love of music to create events that resonate with today's tastemakers. People who attended BizBash Live New York heard him present at the Event Innovation Forum with his client from BMW. In this conversation, he will talk about successfully targeting millennials, how he stays on top of pop culture, and his take on the conventional wisdom of sex sells. Here's a hint, he doesn't think that's the most important thing. Let's listen.
I mean, you're now becoming like this incredible experiential guru at a fairly young age. And
I appreciate that.
How did that happen? And why? What do you see that other people have not seen in terms of how, especially how you relate music and popular culture and sort of the zeitgeist of what's going on in the world to moving products? You know, people are buying you because whatever you're doing is working.
You know, I first of all, I appreciate the kind words, especially coming from you. That is a huge honor. I think. For me, my background, I actually grew up as a professional magician.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
I grew up as a professional magician, and I was a kid magician, part of the Academy of Magical Arts, the junior magicians of the Magic Castle. And I think it's interesting. It's really funny because I was actually having this conversation the other day with someone where I recognized something before it happened, and whatever it was, and they're like, "How did you pick up on that?" And I was like, "Well, I never thought about it before, but." It's this really interesting thing of so much of your job as a magician. Again, your magic and experiential, it's the same. You're creating a moment. You're changing the perception of someone's idea of whatever that brand is. It just before, as a magician, I changed your perception towards what I was doing. I gave you the illusion that I was making something levitate. I was giving you the illusion I was doing a miracle. Today, I take that exact same principle and apply it towards your perception of a brand or your perception of a product. It's the same idea, same concept. It's just instead of you thinking I can levitate something, it's you thinking that this product is cool or whatever it may be. It's the same principle. And I think as a kid, I spent out, and something that most people don't know. So let's say I want to do a French drop, right? Let's say I want to try to make a coin disappear. I'm going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours watching how to actually pick up the coin. So I'll sit there and pick up the coin for real millions of times. And so that way, the one time that I pick it up and it disappears, it looks natural. It looks like the thing that you would expect it to look like. And so I think that's a big thing is how do we as in the experiential world create an experience, create a moment, create a campaign that looks authentic, that looks that it looks real to the consumer. Because if it looks out of place and it looks fake and it looks it looks created, then it brings the consumer out of the magic, out of that moment, and it makes it very apparent that this is a marketing ploy or something like that. So I think that was really interesting and in a different perspective that I come from of it's the same thing. I'm using my skills as a magician to create a story, to create a narrative.
So go into some of the things that you've done with some of the major brands and why how did you sort of like do this in terms of like the end result today, and then take us back to the how the magic trick works. Yeah,
no, absolutely. That's fun. So I mean, and I don't want to completely ignore your other thing. So as far as the music element, I started as a magician. I went to Pepperdine because I wanted to stay local so I can continue at Magic Castle. And through that, I met this really interesting man, this guy, Ray Kennedy, who's a singer-songwriter. He was one of the original members of the Beach Boys. He wrote Sail on Sailor. And he just down, and he needed someone to help on everyday things. And I became basically his pseudo manager, where I was helping on very simple things at first, and that it grew into much larger, more complicated elements. But within that, I got lucky, right? I met this awesome guy, I was meeting with these humongous, icons and legends in music. And this is, all during a massive paradigm shift in music, 10 plus years ago, where all of a sudden the humanity was being pulled out of the music industry. And I was meeting with all these massive guys that were like, hey, this is working. And I identify the fact that, brand deals were working in sports, they're working in movies, they're working everywhere, but they weren't working in music. And it's because music was the Wild West. It was scary, licensing, publishing. It was, someone always walked away as a winner and a loser. So I was trying to figure out, okay, what does this look like? And that's where the idea first came of, I want to create a creative agency and a production house where we can work with a brand, work with an artist, come up with an idea, a campaign that was a win-win for both, and acted as that middleman of the ideation through the execution, so that the artist never had to sit and talk to the brand and have everything fall apart. And then I sat there as the magician and said, okay, how do I tell this narrative? How do I tell this story through creative, where it doesn't look and feel like a branded campaign, but instead this idea of, okay, so, as working along that same time, then I was, sitting as a magician and saying, okay, how do I, now knowing the music side of it, now knowing the, brand side of it, because I always had a kind of a sense for marketing, I can speak both sides of this conversion. Now, coming at it from a magician, how do I create a campaign that has this narrative, this storytelling that can take people out of their everyday life and kind of create this moment in time where they get to suspend belief for a second and just enjoy this campaign, enjoy this thing without it feeling like they're part of a campaign.
So go back a little bit so that people understand what are examples of some of these end result campaigns that you're doing, so that we can put it into context.
So, a big one right now is like the road to Coachella, right? And that's the one that you and I luckily, I just spoke at the big BizBash live in New York about this campaign. This was a big, large campaign. And for this one, BMW was the title sponsor of Coachella. And it was the first time ever that Coachella allowed a sponsor, an automotive sponsor. And at the same time, the first time that BMW was really stepping outside of what they were doing and, sponsoring this millennial music festival. So we had to figure out a narrative. We had to figure out an idea of why does it make sense that BMW is at Coachella? What's the storytelling experience? And last year was, this first year doing it. And we looked at, okay, knowing the artists, knowing the crowd, we know that these millennials at Coachella are a hard group to market to with them thinking, it's cool, as opposed to them just blowing it up online and trolling it. So, we looked at who we thought was going to be the next big thing. And so at that point, Hans, this was the first time Hans Zimmer was going to, be at a music festival. First time ever a music festival is going to have a composer as one of their headliners. And so we looked at what is it like? What does his road to Coachella look like? And I think that was a big thing for us of, what is, you have one road in and out of Coachella. Everyone's road is on the same road, but everyone's road looks so different. And Coachella is this very unique, magical place where people from around the world come together to one place to experience, euphoria, to experience this amazing, experience of brands interacting with, music and technology and all this stuff. And so we wanted to bring all that to life in one narrative that didn't seem like it. And I think for most people, when they saw the campaign, they didn't even realize that BMW really, they thought this was a organic, authentic, fun piece that they just wanted to watch. And we told the story of Hans's road to Coachella, and we integrated all these other, all these other musicians like Marshmello and Group Love and Warpaint, and we just told this video story of what does it look like for Hans to prepare for Coachella. I think another example, and one that actually speaks more to magic, was Sci-Fi's show The Magicians. It came out a couple years ago. It was kind of Harry Potter meets The Vampire Diaries. It was a fun, sexy millennial show. And sci-fi, really needed a way to speak to that millennial audience that, they weren't necessarily doing that well at the time. And they really needed this show to get those college kids. So it was, how do we get these college kids to care about this show on a network that they're not necessarily going to be like, hey, this has all the cool shows. So we looked at this integrated marketing campaign of how do we capture this? So we told this story. And first of all, personally, I was very excited because I like
this is like your sweet spot, all this stuff.
Exactly. The Magicians was dope. Lev Grossman was an awesome author. I think it was a really fun thing. So I got really excited about this. So we identified this unknown artist at the time, right? This girl that we thought was going to be the next big thing. She had a song coming out with G-Eazy. Of course, this was BB Rexa. And now, very exciting. BB actually was just nominated for a bunch of Grammys, including Best New Artist. So, from a storytelling, it's awesome. We got to identify this new artist who now is being recognized as one of the best new artists.
But how did you know? How did you decide this is going to be the coolest thing ever? You have to have a lot of confidence.
100%. I think that's where my background and the background of everyone within Mirrored comes from. So I pulled people from all over the music industry, and we have really embedded contacts within the music industry. So in this case, it was one of my dearest friends, this guy Dave Anderson at Warner Brothers, who was like, "Hey, this is going to be it. She's got this song, G-Eazy, Me, Myself, and I. It's going to blow up to #1. It's going to be crazy. You want this girl before she takes off." And sure enough, again, I think it's having those relationships, knowing what the cycles are going to be, and having that, that trust in yourself and the network around you to support you. And Dave was 100% right, of course. BB blew up. And so we created a narrative. Really, we wanted to do an idea of, okay, how do we harness music? How do we harness influencers to kind of be our ambassadors? Let these college kids, these millennials, be our ambassadors, be our marketers. Let's not try to market to them, but instead market with them. And so we teamed up with BB. We took one of her singles, and for the first time ever, it got used in the Magicians on-air commercial. So now all of a sudden you had Rolling Stone and Billboard and all these interesting millennial music blogs picking up a trailer for a TV show that they never would have talked about before. But now you have all these, really cool millennial blogs talking about the trailer for the Magicians, because it features this never before heard song from BB Rexa, who was, being talked about a lot because of her work with G-Eazy at the time. So then she comes up and says, "Hey, I got to watch," again, there's this crafted narrative of, "Hey, I got to watch the Magicians trailer. It is so cool. I got to see the first episode. I want to come to you guys in colleges across the nation and get to give you a Hollywood premiere on your campus. And I'm going to bring along some of my influencer friends. They're going to host the event with me. And then I'm going to play a concert." And so that's what we did. We went on this, underplay tour, if you will, and we took over college campuses, and we teamed up with 5 major influencers from Full Screen Network. And each of those influencers went up to their massive audience, and they all created original content leading up to it. And one of the pieces was really fun. We got Brittany. She came to the Magic Castle, and this is during the time that the Magic Castle does not let any filming. Now they let a little bit of filming. I know Love did something there and a couple others, but this was when it was on lockdown. And of course, I've been at the castle since I was 13 years old, and so I was able to, use some strings, get them to let us film something there. And we teamed up with a guy that I've known since I was a child and did magic with since I was a kid, this guy David Gabay. And he did this really fun magic with Brittany that became this viral video leading up to her hosting one of her tour stops, where they were basically doing magic together on video. It was very fun. And then Brittany went and she actually hosted the LA event. She hosted, it was at USC. She hosted our UC event and then the USC event, and then BB came out and played, and this went across the entire tour, and it was massive. It was a huge success. Every single venue was at capacity. We gave out, we had RSVP, and all of our RSVP filled up instantly. And it became this huge, viral, fun thing. And for Sci-Fi, it was a huge success. It was one of the largest premieres they've ever had, and they were able to capture more millennials than have ever watched their stuff in the past. So this became a huge success by history. They were able to capture more millennials than they ever really have before. And it did its job, because the people in each campus who got so excited about it, they started talking about it. The influencers that we hired became real ambassadors for the show, and they all talked about it and had so much fun. And Bibi herself, she loved it. She watched the show religiously. She became friends with the cast. She actually hung out with them, and they were friends for, I believe they still are. It's like, it became a very organic and authentic campaign where, again, those kids, they're all a part of it and all got to see it. It didn't feel like they were in a campaign. It felt like they were in an experience. So they got this moment in time that they still remember.
So what did you learn? What did you learn about the idea of translating the accoutrements of these campaigns into the live events? I mean, you're sort of like force feeding the excitement before the excitement can happen at the live event. It sounds like, right?
Yeah, I think for us, I see it as again, just like,
it's your magic. It's your magic concept here.
Exactly, and that's the same thing. It's like anything else. You're going to sit down and you're going to watch a 2-hour movie. They're telling you a narrative. They're telling you a story. You just happen to be watching it. For us, you happen to be experiencing it. So whether it is a lead-up campaign, so back to the road to Coachella, we led up to the road to Coachella with these teasers and influencer posts and all this, this narrative leading up to it. Yes, to build that excitement, to build the storytelling. So then on site at Coachella, we do this massive event with Kylie and Kendall Jenner and Diplo and Migos and Travis Scott and all these wrapped cars and all this stuff. And now all of a sudden it's this arc. It's this storytelling experience where you're getting, even if you're not there, you're around the world. Millions of people around the world are getting to, it pops up on their Instagram feed, and they're getting to see this story. And now they're not wondering what's happening, what did happen. It's what's going to happen next. What's the next cool thing? So last year, we introduced BMW to Coachella, and then this last year, we got to have people get excited to see what we were going to do next. And then they got to see teasers of John Gourley drawing and wondering what John Gourley's art is going to look like. And then they get to see the car revealed to John and have this super exciting moment. And now it makes sense to them. We're not telling them, hey, BMW is super cool, look at this. They're looking at it in through the lens of Coachella. It doesn't feel like a branded campaign. Instead, it just feels like a very authentic storytelling experience with them. And then on site, it makes sense of why we're doing this event. It makes sense. We're telling the BMW story through an event. We're looking at the values of BMW, and we're creating an experience around those values where we don't need to explain why BMW is there, but instead we get to experience it.
What is the lifespan of it's not really about a 1-year deal anymore, though. It's about a lifespan of a deal. It sounds like what you're saying. And but what is the stay fresh date of that? How many years can a campaign like the BMW really last? Or is it something that it's a longer tradition?
I mean, look, obviously we hope it's a longer tradition, right? We hope that something like that becomes, a longer tradition within that. I think it really depends on, for the magicians, it was really a one-off. It was a thing of, hey, let's introduce this brand new show that nobody knows. And we did that, and then the show gets to take its course, and the show gets to do what it does. It was a great show, so now it gets to continue and do its thing organically. Yeah, but it
with
really
Sci-Fi,
depends on the client.
But with Sci-Fi, though, you created a kind of DNA for how they talk to their audiences, whether it's this show or another show. So they've got to kind of do it again in order for it to work. It sounds like. Because you created these relationships.
And Sci-Fi has been really amazing NBC Universal as a whole, between Sci-Fi and USA and all the different properties. I think they've done a really great job at creating, capitalizing at Comic-Con this last year. We worked together on, again, how they do so many amazing, experiences around their properties and individual shows. They really wanted to do something fun for the fans, fan first, for Sci-Fi itself. So how do they create this fun thing just for fans to want, around the Sci-Fi brand? We teamed up with, 3 amazing comic book artists, and then 3 great streetwear brands and created these collaborations at Comic-Con that fans, thousands of fans lined up around the block to try to get one of these exclusive pieces of merch. And I think it's those little fun things that just keep pushing the needle, and it's just different, right? It's doing something that's unexpected. It's doing something that's a little bit different and tapping into pop culture. So that talent, whether it be an artist, whether it be an influencer, whether it be a musician, it's just those ways of capitalizing on, not even capitalizing, because I think that's, to your point of what makes us different, what makes us look at it, we understand it. So I get it from an artist perspective. They're looking at their album cycle, they're looking at their tours, they're looking at all these different things. And the brand, conversely, is looking at their KPIs, they're looking at their release dates, they're looking at all these different things. They're speaking to 100% different languages, whether it's a musician or an influencer or whoever it is. So that's really our approach from it is, what is that middle ground?
But
what
is the comic book guy, the comic book doesn't relate to the show necessarily, but you're associating it with
nothing.
So it's kind of like your magic penny thing,
Exactly. It was a thing of, hey, we want to talk to consumers where they actually want to hear it. And I think that's the interesting thing about music is that you have 93% of the music of the population says they listen to music every day in some capacity. 80% of millennials say that a branded live music event is the best way to reach them. So let's listen to them. Let's give them what they want. Let's give them music. And I think that is, it's a funny thing. I think forever we all thought that sex sells, right? That was the longest, the big thing in marketing is sex sells. But in fact, 75% of people would rather go a week without sex than a week without music. So music sells. Music is the thing that sells.
That is so fantastic.
And I think that's the fun thing, right? I think you have all these people that are saying, especially millennials, which I think, one of the hardest groups and one of the most powerful groups right now, the people to market to. You have all these people that, 64% of millennials have attended a live music event in the last year. And I think of that, the 46% of these millennials, of consumers, say they're more likely to purchase a brand after they've participated in a live music event.
Are you saying
it's this thing that it just doesn't exist anywhere else?
But are you saying that the pleasure center of music is better than sex in a sense?
They are saying, this is first of all, I think the stat is saying that people would rather go a week of giving up sex than a week of giving up music. I think it is hard. They're saying it's harder to give up music than it is to give up sex, which is really interesting for a week. I don't know for longer than that, but I think I think it just shows the power of music, especially when you're targeting millennials.
So what's an example of a brand though that is nowhere in this world that you can transform by associating it with music? I mean, what if you're like sort of teaching a course on this? Like, how would you take a brand that you're maybe pitching now and add a music element to it that lets people connect?
Any of these. I don't think when you think of sci-fi, you don't think of them. Identifying a Grammy award-winning or Grammy-nominated Best New Artist. The same thing with BMW, that you don't see them teaming up with Hans Zimmer and Marshmello and Group Love and Diplo and all these people. So I think that's what.
But how did you do it?
It doesn't necessarily. Yeah.
But when you go and you're pitching this to the client, like, do they look at you with like seven eyes?
They used to. They used to in the same way that 8 years ago when we were pitching experiential, you had to explain every time what is experiential because it wasn't a word, it didn't exist. And now it's that same thing of why is music powerful? Why is music a thing? And I tell you, after they do it for the first time and they participate in some sort of music engagement, they never go back. Our retention rate is so high with this stuff because it doesn't fail. And look at TNT Turner's The Last Ship. It's a great example. At Comic-Con, TNT wanted to release, to bring new light of their brand new show, The Last Ship. So we took over the USS Midway, right, the active aircraft carrier, adjacent to Comic-Con, and we wanted to throw a big event, this big experience where you got to walk through the USS Nathan James. That was the ship on the show. And so we converted the USS Midway into the USS Nathan James, which was a really cool, fun experience. But how do you get 5,000 people through that experience? because no one knew the show. No one knew the draw. So what was our draw? We aligned it with music. We threw a festival style concert on the top of an aircraft carrier with fireworks and lights and pyro and the skydivers skydiving on the top of the ship. And then we teamed up with artists like MGMT, Grimes, Cold War Kids, Bad Sons, Cathedrals. And they played a massive concert that everyone wanted to come to. Whether you're a comic book fan or just happened to be in San Diego, we created this experience that literally the SWAT team had to come and control our door for us because so many people showed up to want to come to this experience. And we did it the next year and actually topped ourselves with an even bigger experience with Alienware, where we did this really fun, cosplay runway show in the middle of the ship. So now it creates this thing where you get fans that get to come through and experience what you want them to experience, but they get to do it and because they want to be there. They want to engage with the music. They want to see this artist, and it becomes very authentic and organic based on the experience you're creating.
We're going to take a little break and come right back after this message from Hilton. So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you. Did the economics work for the brand?
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like you're creating massive sort of reach for them. So it's better than huge advertising, and it's better than anything you can do in the old world.
I think you're seeing that as a whole. I think you're seeing that as a whole and experiential. I think you're seeing experiential marketing. A lot of the traditional ad dollars are now going to experiential marketing. I mean, a massive, as from covering it within BizBash.
Yes.
The event world is getting so much bigger, especially those higher end, more experiential elements. And so I think the music segment within that is a big driver for me personally. That again, we concentrate on music and entertainment. So most of our campaigns are all around, it involve influencers, they involve musicians, they involve it's some entertainment capacity that because I think that's what really drives the conversation, and can take our massive, gorgeous builds and these great experiences that we can create and bring it to that next level, and again create that authentic conversation piece with the consumer.
How do you make sure that your talent is on target? Because you could, you have a good gut instinct for it, but could you be wrong? Or do you hedge your bets? Do you hedge your bets with enough talent at the same place when you do these big concerts?
I think it's one of those things of you work with the people you like, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's one of those things of just like our experiences, right? I mean, I'm 31. When I started this 8 years ago, the majority of my team are all millennials as well. We create the events. So, I mean, we're a boutique. I have the benefit of getting to pick my clients,
right,
turning down the majority of projects that come our way. And I don't necessarily, if I was in this to get rich, I would have done another job. I'm in this to get to go home and tell that story and have the pride in our work. And I think just like picking the artist, it's just like picking our clients. So we pick the projects that we get excited about, that we would want to go to ourselves. And I think that's the same thing with the artist. It's the artist that we truly believe in, that we sit down and with their teams. And again, it's a very small industry. The music industry is really tiny. And so you get to work with the people you trust, the people that you love, and that you aren't gonna fail you. And again, I think that's where that blend of artist to brand is so important. So one of our first projects ever was we did the Acura ILX launch, and they wanted to work with an indie artist. It was their first entry-level vehicle. They wanted to work with an indie artist, and we partnered up with Metric, who at that time, had Synthetica, their album Synthetica coming out. Youth Without Youth was the big single on that, and it was such a great blend because this was one of the first ever hybrid vehicles for Acura. And Emily Haynes, who's the lead singer, was really, really into sustainability and really into environmental causes. And for her, it made a lot of sense. They had never really done a branded deal before like this, but for her, it made sense. She was happy and excited to talk about the ILX because of the potential change and sustainability messages it had. And I think that for us is that big thing of finding that right blend between the messaging, the brand itself, and whatever that campaign is. So it blends. It blends what, whether it's a campaign or not. And back to that magic element, it blends. You don't know. You don't see the string. You don't see the effect. You're not really sure what's happening, and you don't really care. You don't care that it is a campaign or it's not a campaign. You don't care that what is doing the effect. All you care is that you get this moment of happiness for a second. You get to be brought out of your world into this campaign, and you're enjoying it. You're getting what you want as the consumer. You're getting music. You're getting an experience. You're getting a free product, whatever it may be. You get to be a part of this larger thing, and it doesn't matter if it's real or not.
So take me into another place. Let's say you're in a multi-generational audience. I interviewed this kid the other day who works in the wedding world and things like that, and he says that when he's a DJ at an event, he can't get multi-generations to know any music past 2007 because when the iPhone came out, it segmented everything so much that the radio completely died. And do you see that? I mean, if you had to troubleshoot a multi-generational event, what do you do? How do you deal with it?
So here's the interesting thing about, I think, multi-generational and international, because a lot of times we're doing international campaigns. I think music is unique in that the one word, joy can mean a different thing in English and German and all these different things. Whereas music is universal. It tells the same emotion you get from that song, everyone's going to receive that same emotion or a different emotion, but it's universal across the world. And I think that really carries the same across generational. So you look at the other day, right? We just produced the Grove's Christmas tree lighting, right? This massive Christmas tree lighting in the middle of the Grove, which is, a massive shopping center here in Los Angeles. And we had over 30,000 people show up to that. Everything from small little children all the way up to, to elderly, really, that got to come and experience this awesome event. And so we had to create a programming for that show. It was about an hour and 15-minute show that would speak to everyone, because we had to keep the kids engaged, create a show that their parents and grandparents.
So how did you do that?
And so
how did you do that?
We stacked our lineup with a lineup that we thought would, basically have ebbs and flows for everyone. So when everyone looked back on that show, I'm sure they all had their favorite moments that were different, but they all had favorite moments. So it was, having JD, who's the new, Simba and the new Lion King, who's this adorable, amazing, talented kid. Everything, to Dea, who is a very upbeat, contemporary, cool artist that, sings, with the Chainsmokers, Don't Let Me Down. And then you have Andy Grammer, who is this very classic, amazing artist that, has those big international radio hits that everyone will recognize, that plays to maybe that older demographic, but still the kids will know. And in between there, a ton of other things that are very visual and, very visual moments, like a Lindsey Sterling is the, big, massive YouTube artist who, is a violinist, and with her dancers and plus the fireworks. And we created a magic moment. There's another perfect example of, at the end, Santa needs to be revealed. So I get to tap into my magic background and create a moment that Santa gets revealed, that it is magic. Because again, we think about this as we have to create an hour and 10-minute show. We have to do this, we have to do that. But in the end of the day, you're creating this experience for the people watching it, and for these, thousands of kids sitting in the audience. They're about to see Santa. And that's a big thing, right? This is Santa is coming to Los Angeles to see them.
And what did you do?
So we created a 20-foot. So again, our big thing was we wanted to make the stage look bigger, better, different from previous years, because this is an annual thing. So we wanted to stand out. We wanted this year to be different. So we created an entirely different set design, stage design for this. And the centerpiece was more of a homey vibe. And we created this massive 20-foot tall, 16-foot wide fireplace. And we took the neon Grove sign logo. It got mounted into the fireplace. We had massive, huge presents on either side, flanked with a ton of different trees, and a mantle with stockings hanging from the top of this 20-foot thing. And at the end of our show, the climax, Molly Sims, who's our host, got to introduce Santa, and Santa appeared out of this fireplace just like he would in everyone's home,
of course,
and walked out of the fireplace. They had a 6-foot opening in this fireplace, and Santa appeared in this fireplace, walked out, and to a roaring applause. And then him and Molly got to count down the fireworks. And we had this huge 5-minute firework display happen right behind them and over this fireplace. So it was a really cool, magical moment for all these kids getting to sit there. And it felt real. It felt like instead of Santa Claus just walking from off stage and onto the stage, here comes Santa, right? Yeah. You heard his reindeer flying in, you heard him thump down the chimney, and then all of a sudden you get to see Santa. And I think that for us that's what it's all about. It's getting to create this thing that whether you're 10 years old getting to see Santa for the first time, or you're 50 years old and you're like, whoa, that was cool, that was fun, that was different. Because these people all showed up to have an experience,
yep.
And that's what our job is.
And for a shopping center to do this, that's connecting the brand, right? It's the same philosophy of BMW or Sci-Fi Channel or any of the others. I mean, it's making them want to stay there and not be part of a promotion, but be part of the fun.
Exactly.
It's
looking at the Grove differently.
Yeah.
100%. Now the Grove is a magical place. It's getting a team up with a brand or a client that has that vision, that gives you that trust of, hey, you guys are the experts. We're coming to you for this. So we trust you. We trust you on your artist suggestion. We trust you on your influencer suggestion. We trust you on your campaign suggestion. And yes, they should be analytical and they should be critical and they should question everything for sure. But at the end of the day, it's, we pick the clients that we want to work with, and that believe in it.
How do you keep up on popular culture? Like, what advice do you give to other people to know the stuff that you know? If you're trying to sort of be sort of a person that wants to be on the cutting edge of this, like, what do you do? Like, what do you read? What do you look at?
I think it's a multi-pronged approach. For me, it's you have to be out there, right? I mean, we have to live. I live so many different lives because during the day I'm constantly doing marketing and advertising and all this other stuff. And then at night, I go to all these concerts. I try to, every night be out, whether it's going to a concert or whether it's meeting with people. And then I think then it's, of course, it's reading the BizBashes. It's reading the, all the different publications that are like consistently talking about either what our competitors are doing, what other brands are doing, or just what's happening in culture. Because I love that. I love getting inspired by everything around me. But then also I surround myself with people that are way smarter than me. I mean,
right.
I've built a team that I rely on the people around me to know what's cool. I mean, Manny, my creative director, who actually used to be my client, the Crave Online activation with TNT that we were talking about from earlier at Comic-Con, he was my client for that. And then now he's my creative director, and I love having him here. And he has so many cool, different perspectives than I do, and it go very different directions to some of my other team members that are super cool and going to all these different things, and everyone gets to bring these very unique experiences and tastes to the table, and then that's where we get to like mold this together into something that we've never seen.
I believe that people in our business need to eat inspiration for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's the fuel that makes our business do well. And it seems like that, but it comes from all different directions with what you're saying. It's like, where does Manny get his, does he get his juice? I mean, he's not home watching TV, that's for sure. Or maybe he's watching YouTube.
Maybe. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. I think I will say one of our coolest, one of our most fun activations we did this year was with Awesomeness and Invisalign. And my Awesomeness client, Carter Hansen, he watched this crazy video of these kids that took a trampoline up into a mountain. They covered the trampoline with glitter and they bounced on the trampoline, and it created some really interesting visuals. And so he showed us this and was like, hey, let's make this into something. So then we took that inspiration from him that he just watched this video and saw, and we turned that into a branded activation at VidCon this last year, where we took, we made this really fun trampoline 180 photo booth experience where you went in, and it was how do you do this and do it safely, right, so it can happen over and over and over again, get the exact same result, and kids don't kill themselves. And so we created this experience, and it was a ton of fun, and everyone came through. It was featured on the Colbert Report. They did like a little recap on VidCon, and they did a big thing from the trampoline. But it was this really fun thing. So like it's whether it be going to immersive theater and getting an experience, an idea out of that to create into something else, whether it's a show, whether it's a movie, or whether it's just going out and seeing an artist. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out and seen someone and be like, I have to do something with this person. I have to figure this out. We have to be a part of this.
Yeah, we've also talked about going out to tasting restaurants because they're like great experiential things going on at all these places. Like it's right in front of your nose, folks, right?
100%. And that's such an interesting thing, right? Is that experiential, yes, it can be the big 29 rooms and it can be these Instagrammable museums, but it can also be as simple as the experience you have, to your point, when you sit down at French Laundry, your eating experience, yes, the food is unreal, the food's amazing, but your experiences go so far beyond just tasting the food. It goes to the entire ambiance and setting. Again, like I think of like Club 333 at Disneyland. Club 33 is awesome. It's exclusive, it's cool, it's fun, the food is great. But your experience of going to Club 33 is so far beyond the food you're eating. It goes into this entire experience of what it means to be at Club 33. It's just so much more. And I think that is what can go regardless of the vertical, regardless of what we're talking about, whether it's food or it's drink and it's a bar or it's a movie, it's whatever it is, there is an experience to it. You're creating a moment for your consumers, and it's thinking about that moment that you're creating and what they're going to walk away with.
I want to end where we began. Talk about what about magic moments is the craft that you're doing. Like, what is that? Like, I would never ask you how you do something as a magician, right? But how do you do it? Like, what is the craft of creating magic for an experiential artist?
That's a great question. I wish I had an amazing, well put answer for you. I don't know. I think it's that moment of, again, what I love when I was a magician, this idea of getting to let someone forget about their problems for a second and just sit there and watch their face change, right? To just capture their attention and create this moment that then they went on and told all their friends about. Not about me, but about this experience, right? They went on and told about this moment. And by the way, the really funny thing is I've had people come back to me years later and say, hey, do you remember when you did this thing? You did this, you did this, you did this. And it's like, no, that did not happen at all. But that's what their brain created. As they told this over and over and over again, this was this magical moment that they had, that they created. And over time, it morphed. And I think that's the same thing, is that we have this ability to take a moment, and whether it be to promote a CPG brand or a movie or whatever it is, we have this ability to create this moment in time that someone's going to look back on and remember and get excited about and go tell their friends and want to share on Instagram and let them feel this, like they experienced something that nobody else has experienced. They experienced something that blew their mind or moved them emotionally or whatever it may be, that then they get to talk about. And now we harness that person to be our marketer.
So that's the story from Justin about how he mixes magic, music, and experiences. We'll be keeping an eye on Mirrored Media's future events as we look forward to this year's Comic-Con, Coachella, and more. Follow them on Instagram at Mirrored Media. Speaking of big events, we just released our 2019 list of the top 100 events in New York City. See which events were added to the fashion and benefits categories, which art fair moved up in the rankings, and other highlights. You can read that story at bizbash.com or subscribe to the BizBash daily newsletter and get it straight to your inbox. If you're enjoying Gather Geeks, leave us a review on iTunes or on your podcasting platform of choice to help others discover us. Finally, thanks to our producer, Dave Nelson, Claire Hoffman from our editorial team, and our production VP, Rebecca Pappas. Until next week, gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the Gather Geeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, GatherGeeks at bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of Gather Geeks. Until then, gather on.